Hi, it's Jessie. I am back for more. Woohoo! Okay, so you remember how I told you my covenant is cut from with my thumb, right? Um, if you go through your Bible, like back in the days of the wars of the early Jews, you'll find that when they went to war, they cut the thumbs from their enemies, right? And this puzzled me greatly when I gave thought to things, because the Jews' covenant is cut through circumcision with the male parts. This is something that they do routinely for every Jew, but my covenant comes through my thumb, right? So it concerned me to find that they removed the thumbs of their enemies because it it made me question if they were removing the rightful people who were supposed to be in charge of the world, right? Um, and when I raised my concern, they would say um, that they removed the thumbs so that they couldn't fight anymore, so that they couldn't hold a sword, right? They would also say that it means nothing, that it's just a coincidence that my covenant is cut in the thumb and they removed the thumbs. You know, it's really, what's the word? Puzzling. It makes me very curious. It arouses great concern in me that this should happen. But this was so many thousands of years ago. I can't judge the people of today by what happened back then, especially when we can't say what happened back then because they're not saying in their records that they were cutting off the covenant of the people. They're saying that they cut the thumb so that the people couldn't fight. Um, so I'm 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 telling you this so that I can raise a point with you that sometimes when you go looking through history for the answer, you might find an answer and it still won't make sense to you. You know, you still won't be able to draw any solid conclusions from it. It really won't prove anything. It'll just raise concern in you. And whether those concerns are merited or unmerited is yet to be said, right? Um, in Christianity, they have an expression, you shall know them by their ways, right? And so when we judge things, we need to judge them by the order that they keep, you know. And right now, out in the world, we have this enemy that hides and works through other people. It thinks that true power survives because it stays hidden, but this is untrue. It is a coward that hides and fights through other people. You know, I stand alone. I'm an army of one. Whether people will get behind me or not will not change my course in my conquest, okay? So what's my conquest, Um, like I like I said in my last video, we're gonna change the standards of things, and we're gonna try to say who can be the one that sits at the leadership head to change the standards, right? And in deciding this, we have some things that we have to understand, right? Um, okay, so in Christianity, they say that the Pharisees were bad and the Samaritans were good, right? And this means nothing to most people, right? Nothing at all. The Samaritans are pretty much wiped out. Um, but the Pharisees survived, and they survived by taking on a new name. We call it Rabbinic Judaism, right? So the Pharisees are still alive and thriving today, just so that we're clear. And I'm not bringing an enemy to you. I'm allowing you to see the confusion that history causes, okay? Because history, it not only causes confusion for people who are uninvolved, but it causes great confusion for people who are directly involved, God dropped this word on me a long time ago when I was preaching Jesus. He gave me a rebuke, and he said that Judas was the Messiah. And I had no idea who Judas was at the time. I was like, what are you talking about? And I was struggling to understand, I was struggling to understand because the only Judas that I could think about was the Judas that betrayed him. And I'm like, okay, so Judas killed himself. And the Jews have this belief that if the Messiah dies, then he's not the Messiah if the world doesn't end, right? But Judas killed himself, so was he like the substitute for the world ending, you know? The two died together instead of, the world ending with the death of Jesus. And I was going round and round trying to figure it out, great confusion in my mind, trying to understand. And then God began to unpack things more for me. And he sent me teachers. And he sent me teachers when I would ask him, when I would pray and ask for answers. He would send me people to teach me from Christianity, but not only from Christianity, from the Jews, which is why I call the Jews my brothers. They have taught me so much. There's like this unity here where I pray and I ask God a question, and then it's delivered through their lips. So I greatly ask you, don't get things confused when I tell you that the Pharisees of old, and even though Jesus says that the Pharisees of old are the enemy, that the Pharisees of old are the rabbinic Jews of now. Don't get confused and believe that the rabbinic Jews are the enemy, because God used them to teach me. And if he used them to teach me, then it's for the good. And it doesn't mean that they're necessarily the enemy. Can you stay with me on that part? Okay. So let's get back to Judas, right? Let's get back to who's Judas? Judas Maccabeus, right? He had some brothers, and there was this Maccabean revolt way back when that took down the Seclud. How do you say it? The Assyrian Greeks, right? He took down their empire, and it gave rise to the Hashmonean dynasty, right? But before we get into the Hashmonean dynasty, let's talk about what happened before the revolt, right? These were the people of old. The thing that God sent a Messiah to deliver the people from, right? What were they struggling with? And I can tell you for certain that the things that they were struggling with are not much different from what we are struggling with today. The rulers had this basic premise that if you bowed to them, you could do whatever you want, and they would specifically target anyone who wouldn't bow to them, who wouldn't adopt their ways and their standards, which is why the Jews were so much a target in their sights. And the way that they crippled the Jews during this time period was they played with the laws, and given that the Jews are law-keeping people, they're commanded to follow the law of the land that they live in, right? So when these people, they start passing laws, they're passing laws that you got to eat pork, even though for a Jew it's forbidden, They can eat pork to save their life, but otherwise it's forbidden, right? They were passing laws regarding privacy, that they weren't allowed to have doors on their houses so anybody could come and see. And if you think about it, families couldn't be intimate with one another. Husband and wife couldn't be intimate with one another, They kept playing with the laws when they saw that there was accommodations made to get around laws. They kept playing with laws, and then they started making it so that before a woman could be married, she had to spend the night with the governor, and spending the night with the governor meant that he would take her virginity from her. So he would return the woman impure to be married, right? They passed all these heinous laws, and not only that, they turned the people against one another. Like, if you come here, you can, go to the gym. Gyms were always big with the Greeks. We know from the Olympics, right, that they're very sporty people. They're very they love to take care of their appearance, right? They love to be the strongest and be the best, and you're invited. You can do these things over here. It's not so bad. Just give up your own culture and you can live this way, you know. So they were like turning people against people, right? To say that their ways were better. Only the people weren't paying any attention to see that we joined this cause. Yeah, we're living good. We're high on the hog. We're at the gym. We got leisurely activity. We're healthier. We're part of the community. We don't face the strife. But they didn't understand that they weren't becoming part of something good. They were becoming part of something that was oppressing the rest of the people, you know, because this kind of leadership that they had back then, they needed an enemy. They needed someone that they could exploit. They needed slaves. They needed somebody to put the weight of the work that had to be done upon. So this is where they get all twisted and crazy with how they treat people and exploit people and bring people under their submission. They would hang children by their mother's neck and execute them both. And to put it in today's terms, when they targeted my kids to get to me, they were hanging the children by my neck and they were trying to execute us both. So when I hear of the history of the Maccabees, when I hear of the stories that the Jews tell about them, I understand what they went through back then and how hard it was, because I suffered the same thing today. And in Christianity, we learn this expression that says, you know them by their ways. Then you understand, if I'm suffering the same thing that they suffered way back when, then the same system of leadership, it doesn't matter, the faces are different, the same system of leadership is in rule today. Someone adopted their policies and their tactics. Yeah, the Maccabees took them down way back when, but then things happened in their community. You understand? Things happened where they started fighting against each other. The Pharisees had this complaint against the monarchy, the kings. They had this complaint that they were ruling as both king and priest, and they said that it violated Torah. But if you read the books of the prophets, it says of a Messiah that will rule as both king and priest. So the leaders of that time, their mind was twisted with accusation that they didn't realize that prophecy was being fulfilled, and it carried through the ages, because they still face the same accusation. And the other accusation they face is that they're idolatrous, that they were idol worshippers. But that's not the thing. I think idol worship is just something that gets like a blanket accusation thrown at somebody that you want to kill. It's one of these generalizations, one of these cliches that we put on people that we want to kill. I don't weigh that accusation with the same amount of force that I'd weigh another accusation, because I realize that when somebody wants to kill you, they'll accuse you of idolatry, and they can say anything from the Pepsi that I drink. Pepsi is idolatry, because I gotta have my Pepsi every day. What kind of idol am I serving, I've heard the stupid accusations that they make with idolatry, and I don't fall for it. I don't. When I hear that claim, I think, nah, you're full of BS, because I've heard it all through these years, and I've heard the twisted ways that they use to kill people, and it's ridiculous. It's just stupid. It's weaponizing the Bible, It's weaponizing the Bible for selfish gain, It's stupid. So I never give stock to anyone who makes an idolatrous claim, But But these are the things that they say against them, you know. But then when you listen to the stories that they tell about the Maccabees, is particularly Mattathias, the father, he's got several different stories about his background. They actually confuse his identity with someone else. It's real hard to know who he was or how their story began. And if you look at my story, if you get a hold of my file, you'll see that my identity is twisted with other people's identities, that they've merged my identity with people that I don't know. Like one identity is Diana San Diego. I don't know who she is. Never used the alias. Claire Ellen Kelly, don't know who she is. Never used the alias, but I get mail for those two, so I know about those two, right? But they confuse the identity, and you know them by their ways, right? So if they did it back then with Mattathias and they're doing it right now with me, then we can identify that it's the same enemy that's using the same tactics, operating with the same system, with the same objective. Then we can see that we know them. It's the same ones that took down the Maccabees, right? I have distraction behind me. It's going to cloud my narrative a bit, but I'm going to try to keep pushing forward with my video because I'm on a mission here. Okay, so it wasn't just that they clouded the identity. They funked up the narrative around the beginning. Like one story tells about Mattathias' daughter, how she was the one who was sent over to the governor before his wedding, and this was the start of the uprising. And another story says that the start of the uprising was when they were forced to eat pig, and Mattathias jumped up and slayed them, you know, and then they ran off into the woods after that and didn't follow orders. So you see, the origin of the narrative is really tainted. It's messy, and there's no correction in this, right? There's no way for us to know exactly what happened. Like the Jews, they didn't carry the books of the Maccabees, right? They celebrate Hanukkah, but they say that if any of the Maccabees had survived, they'd be slaves right now. And my enemy has made me a slave, right? Yes, he's made me a slave. I cannot go out and work. To work, it's a blessing, you know. To have liberty is a blessing. All of my movements are tracked. They try to push me, force me to do what they want me to do. They hedge me in. They give me no options. They cut me off from anyone who says that they're willing to help me. You know, they have all kinds of tricks that they use against me, right? So, yeah, they might have made me a slave, but I'm betting on God to bring his exodus, and because I'm betting on God to bring his exodus, I'm already out in my mind, which is why I can speak freely now, you know? But to understand in context with the Maccabees, what happened with them, right? They turned the house against one another. So we got these three factions competing against one another. We got the Sadducees, we got the Pharisees, and we got the Samaritans, right? Now, in case you don't know, everything in Judaism runs according to a calendar, okay? And in Jeremiah, I can't remember the exact verse right now, but it says that the covenant will not depart from them unless the order of the sun and the moon be changed. Now, the reason why this order of the sun and moon is so important is because everything that they do is set to time, and it's most important that they keep time at the appointed time. So way back in the day, when they got these three factions competing against each other, they got these guys up in the mountains who send signals of when the appointed festivals are supposed to begin, and they watch for the signal of the first sign of the new moon, you know? And the competing factions know how they communicated things, so they would go up a few days earlier and send out the signal, but it would be the wrong time, and the festival would not take place in the right time. They changed the order of the sun and the moon, to be exact. So why does that matter? Well, it matters because it wasn't long after all this stuff started going on that the temple fell. The Jews will tell you that the temple fell because of baseless hatred. And I get baseless hatred because this enemy provokes people against each other. It likes to divide the house, and then it picks sides. And it says, we're on your team. Let's go get her. Let's kill her. Let's destroy her. We're going to make everything look the way we want it. We're going to erase all evidence. We're going to make it so she's got no way out, no escape. And when they're unsuccessful in doing what they do, then they come over here and they say, hey, let's go back and get him. Let's beat him up. Let's erase him from the calendar. Let's do this. Let's do that. And, when you've suffered enough, you throw that yoke off you and you stop seeing the ones who are supposed to be help as righteous people. You stop believing that they're going to bring you justice. And you sit here and say, no, God cut this covenant with me a long time ago. So you know what? I'm going to choose to embrace it. I'm going to suffer for God. And you can call me wicked for it, but it's not being wicked. See, I've thrown off your yoke, and I don't care what you say anymore. I will cling to my God, and I will believe in him for deliverance. I don't care if you say, let you give me justice because you hold the position for it, because I don't believe you are just. I don't believe, I think the only reason why you want to do this now is to cover yourself so you don't die with the devil, but it's too bad. It's too bad. You have to be responsible and accountable for everything you did, because I'm not going to cover you. You're not going to grab my side of the story, go and slay him and pretend like, ooh, I'm Mr. Superman, whatever. No. We're not doing that. No. I will suffer for God, and I will trust God to bring the justice. But I see how this is how they divide the house, playing each one against the other, drawing power from them so that they can go and kill the other. And they're not on anybody's side. They're on the side of drawing power out of the family for themselves, which means it wasn't the Sadducees, it wasn't the Pharisees, nor was it the Samaritans, even though the Pharisees really hate the Samaritans and the rabbis still hate them to this day, It wasn't none of them. It was the one sitting on top of the house, causing all the chaos, telling them how to get around things. Because this enemy knows the law better than you do, and it uses it against you to sabotage you and bring you down. If God said the covenant won't depart unless the order of the sun and moon are changed, these people figured out, hey, we don't have to stop the sun from turning. We just have to change the festival dates, because really everything in Judaism is dependent on keeping time. Very clever little rascals they are, So, I don't know. Me personally, I think the way to be free of them, to return to God, because, the covenant is always, it's an everlasting covenant. So even when you make a mistake, you can come back to God. But you can't come back to God when you're under the yoke of your enemy. So the first thing you got to do is, throw off that yoke and then return, return to the way that things are supposed to be, Why is a Jew important? It's not just about religion. It's about being a catalyst, If God was experienced, all of the world, if the world experienced God the way I did, oh man, we'd all be laid out. We'd all be dead, because there'd be nothing for us to look up to and say, I want to live, God kills some of us, it's why they say no one can see the face of God and live. I've seen the face of God, okay? But they say no one can see the face of God and live. It's a hard knock life. But your children, the children that he gives you, They give you strength for endurance. They give you strength to get back up. Like you said, he gives you children for your redemption, so that even after you've seen his face, you still have the strength to say, okay, I don't know how to get back in the world with these people, but I know how to make it so that my children can survive in the world with these people. I know how to make it so that my children are good and productive citizens, how they'll work hard and they'll make a contribution and they'll be law-abiding. I know how to teach them to guard their life. So even though I'm down here, I can lift them up, I can help them to find life, right? If we were all like me, there would be nothing to climb up to, no point for living. So when we say the Jews were a catalyst, we should be thankful that God allowed a catalyst through the Jewish people, because it ain't easy. You don't want to experience what we experience when they say no one can look at God and live. Believe them. Believe them. Believe them when they say you'll still live. You'll still have breath. But you won't have life because the world will be completely against you. And even the Jews will tell you that you have to die. They've told me that many times. No. I have a new covenant. You don't get to set the terms on my covenant. That's how we back them down. That's how we back down all these things. But to recognize that what took them down back then is still hard at work today. They're still dividing houses the way they divided houses back then. They're still playing with the law to get over on people, to oppress people. The anti-terrorism laws, where they have surveillance, it's just supposed to be over terrorists, and yet they've been watching me nonstop for like 20 years. They're watching me now. They play with the laws. They get in your house, They get in your house and they cause ruckus in your house with the stuff that they glean, the stuff that they learn, They create manufactured crisis, It's ridiculous, the things that they do. So when they say baseless hatred caused the tower to fall, I'm telling you, when the Maccabees took down this empire, they didn't get them all. They let some of the kings live, and some of the kings, the last brother alive, Simon was invited to a banquet in his honor. Do you know how much these people use awards to lure you in so they can kill you? The same way they did way back when is the same way they're doing now. And I tell people, I don't believe in a separation of church and state. Not because I don't think the two shouldn't be connected, separated. How do you say it? I think that we should have this unity, because if they're using this playbook, this is the playbook that lawmakers and leaders are using against us on the other side, where they're teaching at West Point how to suppress guerrilla warfare, They're teaching the books of the Maccabees this way. I think that we all need to be mindful of these things, because we can learn how to be devious and how to gain power and how to live in the shadows and how to use people to do our dirty work. Or we can choose to be good. We can choose to build a better world, because we've seen where this leads, We've seen that it only spirals further down and further down until they wind up like Sodom and Gomorrah and God rains fire on them, We can see where that leads. But we can also see that when we choose to do good, we can see that God brings a harvest for us, that we get to benefit from our harvest, that we get to live in the houses that we build, that we get to put down roots and bear fruit, We get to see the benefit of good. It's not about eating our brother to survive, because that's what this order of way back when was. It was eat someone to get ahead. We don't need to eat someone to get ahead. We need to choose to do good to get ahead, And this is the mission that I'm on, to open people's eyes to let the scales fall off, because they're going to look at their brother and say, you did this, you know. But no, don't blame your brother. Hold on, because it wasn't. It was the one sitting up top, pulling strings, directing, you know, directing all the chaos in your life to keep you busy, because you might be in a position to challenge their seat of authority, and they don't want that, you know. So we got to be real careful about those things. And I'm over 30 minutes again. So I'm just saying, let's choose to do good and build a better world, okay? Y'all have a good day. God bless.